Looks like we still have a few people rolling in, but let's get started. Welcome, everyone. So glad you can join us today on this little webinar we like to call Virtual Brunch with Actual Nerds. My name is Leighton Rasco, and I'm a nerd, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. Today, we have some very special guest nerds because it's you. Each and every one of you that's joining us will be a special guest nerd because we want to hear about real life experiences working in the meeting industry since the COVID outbreak. We need to hear from the broadest swath of meeting professionals out there. But first, I got to go through some obligatory housekeeping notes. So please update your Zoom name to represent your full name and your company name, because it's really hard to mark Karen's iPhone as attended in our system. Next, we got that you're on mute, and I'm talking and you can hear me because I'm not muted. But if you also want to be heard, you could unmute yourself and go ahead and speak up. Which brings us to our next point, which we do want you to speak up. This is an open discussion. We need you guys to speak up. We need you guys to ask questions and put your experiences out for everybody to rationalize. And so we're going to look for hand raises. We're going to look for virtual hand raises. So at the bottom of your screen, if you go to the reaction tab and click on hand raise, it will raise your virtual hand. Have you guys been on these webinars before? And have I mentioned that we have an archive? You can watch all of our previous recorded webinars for free. Wired Magazine called us the best streaming deal on the internet. That's actually not true, but you should still check out our archive. It's attendingnet.com/archive. And in a few days, we'll have this one up too. We've got a disclaimer coming next. Oh, it is that we want to respect our clients. We will try not to refer to them by name. Platforms, vendors, venues, they're all fair game, although we're not trying to recommend or condemn any one or another. So let's get on with introductions, except today, we're not going to do introductions. We're going to do something different. We want everybody to participate, and instead of going around like one by one, introducing every single person on the call, if you feel compelled to speak up, please just take 1 second to introduce yourself before you question or comment. You can say your name, your organization, a brief life story, just whatever feels appropriate. Go ahead and do that before you start talking. And there's a good chance I'm gonna say something to some of our AMI folks that will forget to introduce themselves before they start talking. But stick with us. We are ready to go with our first question, which was submitted during the registration process. Katie Duhan, she asks about hybrid meetings. She says, what's working best in terms of virtual components to complement the in-person logistics? So I know that Jill has just wrapped up a pretty big hybrid event, and we're going to kick it to her and see what she has to say about that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Rasco. I am one of the usual nerds here at Attendee Management. And yeah, one of the organizations that I work with did a hybrid event. So we had some people live at, we're at the Gaylord in Dallas, and a lot of people online. And frankly, the number of registrations was amazing. For an event that's typically a chapter event, we'll be happy to see 80 or 100 people. And we had 700 people register and 500 people actually attended.
Pairing mode, waiting for device to connect.
Oh, somebody's waiting for the device to connect. Hi, everybody. So, I mean, it was really, really a great, it was the first thing we had done that was hybrid. So there was a whole lot of learning that we gained from it. A lot of things that, you know, when you look back at it, you go, oh, duh. Like, you know, maybe we should have practiced a little bit more. Maybe we should have practiced, with the speakers and the AV people. I don't think we understood how much work it was really going to be to pull off a hybrid event and a virtual event. I mean, literally, it's 2 events in one. And I don't think we were quite prepared for the online side. I mean, we are really good at live events, and that was really pretty smooth, but I think we could have improved a lot on the virtual side. So that was fun. So I have a lot of, I mean, I'll sprinkle, as we talk, I'll sprinkle in other lessons learned. I attended a hybrid event yesterday that was fabulous. And I have a lot of to-dos from that one that just worked really well. I'll share as we go along. So back to you, Late. Uh-oh, you're muted.
Before Leighton talked, I was going to ask Jill, you said fabulous. What can you, I know you said you're going to come up, talk a little bit about down the road, like what you thought was fabulous, but is there an overreaching thing that made it feel fabulous?
Well, and I'll point to Cindy Lowe too in a minute, but one of the things that they did that I had not seen in the literally hundreds of webinars I've been on, webinars and meetings and Zooms and WebExes and Microsoft Teams, all of them, it was very inclusive of the virtual audience. So they took the time to pan the live audience so we could see what the setup was like. They did some interviews internally as they were setting up. I mean, they showed us the kinds of signage that was in place for the live people.
Can you go into a little bit of detail about like what the setup was like, what the signage was like for the in-person, and how that related to the virtual audience?
Well, at the event that was in July, we had a device that checked your temperature and would also check to see if you had a mask on. But
now, did this count?
I don't think so. Maybe it had to be a different color.
Right. So if I wore a glove and did that.
If you had a glove on, it would count. But like single access entry, so you go in one door and out another door. They went kind of old fashioned and did color coding. So you sat at a table and your placard at your table had a color, and you left the room by colors so that 150 people weren't all leaving out the same door at the same time. So
yeah, and that's probably a good deterrent for people just roaming trying to find their name on a table.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Everybody stayed at their same table. You didn't sit somewhere else. Speakers moved rather than audiences during the breakouts, for instance. They just moved the speakers. So, and really good signage, which, you know, that's such a simple thing, but in my years as, you know, customer service, the really truly retailers that are considered great, half of the time it's because they have good signage. You can find what you're looking for. I mean, it's so simple. It's common sense. But it was nice. Does that help, Christina?
Well, Jill, I was going to keep picking on you and ask, you know, what were some of the pitfalls that you saw?
From this event yesterday, I really didn't have any. I know we learned some pitfalls from the prior event that I was part of the team, and that, you know, some of that was better communications amongst the team. We needed a not a cheerleader, but a quarterback. We needed somebody who was actually the planner that planned the entire event, so they'd keep everybody in line and straight, and everybody kind of would know their roles and responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So a little more pre-planning. But, you know, one of the things that went really, really well was we did a post-con within the week afterwards and really got everybody on the team talking about what went well, what didn't go well, what we could improve. So I've got pages of notes from that.
So is that same organization planning another one next month in the same fashion, or?
They're planning another one, but not next month.
Okay, sure.
2 months.
2 months?
2 months.
I'd be curious to ask, what do y'all think the temperature would be in the sense of our clients feeling comfortable doing what we're doing? Because I know a lot of them are industry related, and like I attended my first one this past Sunday in Austin, and I'm trying to, and my name is Cindy, Red Velvet Events in Austin, Texas. Sorry, I realized it. I was like, I didn't introduce myself, but I'd be curious to hear what y'all think, because someone made a good point, which was, don't you feel like all these hybrid ones have all been our own, and we already all know we want to go back to work, but are our clients really going to listen? So I'd be curious to hear if anyone else has any insight or any gut check.
Are you saying we're having events for ourselves?
A little bit,
Yeah.
but I will tell you, I personally, I mean, that's why I have even done some virtuals for ourselves, is because you learn best when you do it. And so when I did the hybrid, I came back to the team this week with some takeaways, and I said, okay, when we do our first hybrid, this is what I want to see changed, because you do need to make the mistakes almost internally before we make it on the client, because that would be kind of a painful moment. And but I'm curious again, is if anyone has heard any positive, like, oh, wow, you know, I saw them do it. I'm starting to see more people do it. I feel better about it. Because what's interesting is I am hearing a few like corporate events happening. They're much smaller, of course, but they're not hiring us. They're actually trying to do it themselves. And you know why? Mainly because of shame, because people, not because of us shaming them, because of the public shaming them. So they're worried that if they hire an agency like us, and even though we'll sign an NDA, a confidentiality, everything, anything to not promote it, but they're worried that it will come across as if they're doing something bad. And it's not bad. I mean, we're doing it as the safest way possible.
Is that what you mean by bad? Is that it's not safe?
They are afraid of the PR backlash.
Ah, okay.
They are afraid of being on the front page of USA Today or whatever their local paper is and saying, oh my gosh, can you believe it? XYZ company met. In fact, I was talking to a friendly competitor of mine in another market, and they were allowed initially to give a PR piece after the event because it was successful. 300 people in an area for 1,000. No further COVID cases that they're aware of. It was in the heat of COVID in June. And the first negative PR backlash, the client took away the right. They're like, you can't talk about my event anymore. We just can't. We're getting hate mail. We're getting, and it's a shame because we are now associated with negativity, and I don't want that.
Yeah, it is a shame. It's kind of a good transition to, first of all, why I had to add a disclaimer at the beginning that we're not going to put our clients' names out there, but we worked a 600-person event last month. Christina and Jennifer were both in person on that event. You guys want to give a little rundown about what happened and what we did and what the climate was like?
Sure. I am Jennifer Rasco-Smith. I am bouncer and senior designer here at Attending Management. Christine and I actually worked or helped our client to have a live in-person event, which they also live streamed. There were about 700 attendees, and then many more, obviously, that chose to sit at their own home in the comfortable chair and watch from there. We actually, using our masks, we worked on site. We did the touchscreen application ourselves so the attendees didn't have to worry about it. And it was just really exciting to see people because they were so excited to be in person together. I just felt like it was a wonderful opportunity for our team to share. So.
Christina, anything to add?
Yeah, Well, it's interesting because like from a personal perspective, as Jennifer said, like it was great. Like it was great to be, gosh, sorry. Right. It was great to be out there and like feel right again, like a person. And I was personally, I was like kind of most worried about like flying, which was no big deal at all. I felt so like safe flying. I mean, that probably will change as but that part was fine. It was interesting being on site. It was really great to see people. Our client took a different approach to to things like a little bit differently than expected. But I wanted to kind of touch on Cindy's comment, because it's not something that we were kind of intending to bring up, but as far as like some backlash, and they did get some press locally on having an event, as the county they're in had recently put a mask ordinance in. The cases locally were we're increasing, so they got some attention, and on that piece, and I don't think we found that attention afterwards, and it was actually published like before the event itself, but that's interesting and not something that I had thought about before going in, is the attention piece. And kind of on an additional note to that, they had ended up changing venues. They took it to their headquarters instead of a hotel where it was originally going to be. And, probably because of, I don't think that hotel wanted some of the, some of the publicity surrounding it as well, among other things. I'm sure there are other pieces too, but it was really interesting and definitely new. Definitely not something I've experienced.
But can I ask, y'all did, again, all the safety precautions as you could, right? Like it wasn't like you said, hey, masks are optional. You said it was mandatory to have a mask on at the event, right?
And
so,
we did, yeah, like, and we made sure, like, at least from what we could control, like our team, that, we kind of approached it saying like, listen, our team we need to represent the person who is least comfortable. So masks and people, and just making sure that they weren't like traditionally this client used like a self-serve, at least a self-serve check-in. It's not really a kiosk setup, but they, the individual person came in and typed their name on the screen and touched stuff. And so that kind of thing we flipped in to keep that controlled.
Because I think there's a difference between those that are talking about partying and versus an actual meeting that's taking the safety protocols serious. And again, this is not self-serving. I mean, so I won't put it in the chat room, but I've been trying to track all the events that have been happening since, if your respective state has reopened or your respective country has reopened to events, I've asked, as soon as I hear of an event, if they are doing contact tracing, if they could share with us on my Safe Live event tracker. It's not an official document, it's my own. And it's because I'm trying to show cases where all the safety measures were, implemented and enforced, and contact tracing was happening, and that they're not aware of any new COVID cases coming out of their event. Because I do feel like media is going to always focus on the super spreader or the negative, and no one is being our advocate and our voice of showing all these events that are happening right now. Now, they're not as many, of course, as pre-March and pre-February, but no one's talking about those that are happening, that are doing it well and doing it safely. And what was interesting, since Austin, or Texas, I should say, has been reopened to weddings since May, one of my first submissions was actually a wedding planner of 2 doctors that are on the front line that had a wedding for 50 people, okay? Now, 2 doctors who know the risk that they were in, and they were comfortable with, as long as their guests were willing to do these things, they were comfortable with having their wedding outside. So my point is that we should listen to the science, and also let's hopefully advocate for ourselves, because I feel like we're not. And And I know it's scary, but we're not getting out of this for quite a while, unfortunately, you know? And so to those that keep saying, well, wait for a vaccine. I mean, I don't know how many businesses will be left standing at that point, to be honest, because every month we lose, we're losing revenue.
Yeah, I did leave thinking we can do this, you know,
Good.
like,
I'm glad to hear that, Christina.
this is something that can happen. I mean, if we're in it together, in Wimberley here in the little town, and I just realized I never introduced myself, so Leighton's probably like really
I didn't
upset
notice
with me.
either, so just do it now. Just flip it on now. Nobody will notice.
I'm Christina Rasco, another nerd here at AMI. But in the little town that we live in, there's a lot of shops, and they all in the windows say, you know, wear your mask so we can stay open. I mean, I think that's about what it is. It's a nice thing. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I felt coming home like, oh my gosh, like this is something we can, if we can come together and do these things, like we can do this. We can meet. You know, I don't think we can do 50,000 like citywides are going to take a while, right? But there is so much potential here. Go ahead, Jill.
Yesterday, the guy from the Omni, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he said half of their properties are having business meetings again. Yeah, so there are business meetings happening. They are smaller, granted. They're not these big 1,000 people business meetings, but they are seeing it. And they have implemented all kinds of safety protocols. And they did a display, or they went around with a roving camera yesterday and kind of explained what was going on, and the way the food was packaged and the way the food was delivered, and it was delivered to an empty room, and then they came back in and they sat down and it was all there at their table. And even back of the house is safety protocols. Matter of fact, they've implemented an I'm cool sticker. So they have their temperature taken every day, and as long as they pass, they get an I'm cool sticker. So back of the house is masked up and safe. So granted.
So, but if you show up with like slick back hair and a cigarette pack rolled into your sleeve, you get that automatically, right?
Well, you get the one that says I'm super cool.
Okay, I'm gonna give a little try. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Angela.
So, hello. I just wanted to kind of give a broad picture of what I'm seeing. I had technical difficulties with my Bluetooth sound, so I'm on phone now. But meetings means business, and we should all hashtag meetings means business follow on social media, are advocating to separate meetings, planned events from mass gatherings. So with the CDC and the WHO, we are actually lumped together as a mass gathering. We don't have the ability to talk about planned events, where we have the ability as meeting planners. My meeting planners can say where you're going to sit. They can dictate how the meal runs. We definitely need, now knowing what we have now, to be separated out from that. I mean, I truly believe we would have masked up and kept going, because along the lines of what Cindy was saying and Christina and Jennifer, like we're like trying to edge into these events, and the people who are trying to have the events are feeling very stressed. I mean, John, on every call that I've been on with you, everybody always says, what is the liability? Am I liable if someone gets sick? And there isn't contact tracing going on. And, even with Boston at the very beginning when February happened, it took them nearly 90 days to figure out that, an outbreak is 3 people who contract illness within 3 days of each other that were at the same event. So that's nearly impossible to track unless we have, like phone like Asia. So, I mean, I believe, because I'm trying to get people to do a hybrid, I've talked to all the brands. I mean, I've been through 42 event cancellations. So I'll just call them cancellations, although we don't want to call them cancellations when we're walking away. Right, John? And, it's catastrophic. It's starting to go through May. I was on a call on Tuesday about May because government agencies have travel restrictions through June of 2021. So it's a real problem. And I'm with Cindy, like we have got to start getting these things going. But, you know, in my particular person, I'm with Homes Briscoe, so I advocate for the client and I do what the client does, but I also see my business and a lot of my, you know, cohorts just dying on the vine like myself, trying to do, you know, the right thing for everybody. And I do think people are afraid to have meetings. I think they're worried about, you know, and I think it's sad that your 600-person meeting isn't screaming from the rooftops that we did a fantastic job, and that's what they should be doing. But I will tell you, there are liability issues, especially when it comes to press, right? And so somewhere we're going to have to find a balance. But I think we all kind of need to advocate with meetings means business. I mean, this thing is now coming into a second life after the 2008, 2009 fallout when we couldn't have resorts and things like that. But I think we need to start really thinking about the fact that we need to be different from mass gatherings. We're not just a concert, you know, we are, you know, a planned event. So that's just kind of my 2 cents.
Thanks, Angela. That is an excellent point. And also, you kind of need to know your client and the audience. I mean, to be perfectly honest, when a week out from that 700-person event that we helped staff, they changed venues from Florida to Tennessee, and I was like, oh, they're gonna get like 100 people tops. But they knew their audience, and they knew that they would still come, and they were right.
Well, and one thing positive from that meeting is they're also talking about an October event. So, you know, it's great to see people getting out there and proving it's, you know, it's okay. I traveled to the event and then went visiting family. So, and I never felt scared. You know, people were wearing their masks. You just have to take care of yourself. You know, that's the main thing.
Maybe I add a word here on the questions relative to liability, if I may. And part of the issue that we see is that we're not quite sure what that liability really is. And as we look at the whole situation, if a person comes down and they leave your event, 3 days later they're convulsing or whatever, and they have some kind of disease that may be there, communicable or otherwise, the problem becomes from a liability standpoint. You have to show that by virtue of my being at that program, that you did not properly provide for my protection and my health, not to mention what did I do to protect myself from the situation, all becomes issues of fact. And so we're not seeing a whole lot of cases, I think, relative to the meeting structure. Now, if I'm the employer and I am sponsoring the meeting and I say to you, you must absolutely positively have to go to that, and you come down with some kind of disease, regardless, because I am your employee, I don't have a liability claim, I have a workers' compensation claim. Because as a result of my participating in that program, as part of my employment, I may have been subjected to some kind of medicine or a medical problem. So I think what we have here is the liability path. Yes, we should be concerned. Yes, we should take those steps that we can to minimize the exposure by exercising due care. We follow what the CDC suggests. We go forward with that. We have constrictions within our contracts with the property as to what steps they're obligated to take and what are they doing to meet their obligations under the duty to care. Then we have it superimposed on that, what does the local government, the state, the feds say about your ability to have a program of 10, 50, 250? We're seeing all over the lot the limitations on the amount of people who can gather for a program. I mean, what was interesting in Las Vegas and went to the Supreme Court of the United States, which rejected it, were churches saying, why can't we have the same requirements that a casino has, that we can have 250 people come to church on Sunday, as opposed to the limitation of 25 or whatever it was. And the court basically dodged the bullet and did not take the case. But the key element here is, I think, the separation of what you are doing with a meeting versus a festival versus a large gathering, et cetera, becomes important. Here in my hometown of Chicago, we're going through a big debate now. Is a flea market, a vegetable, a open farmer's market, the same as a festival where you have thousands of people gathering to hear whatever group it might be, versus a gathering of people who are coming for merchandising purposes to buy stuff, walking down a lane in an open area overall? I don't know, but we're trying to find out what are these distinctions, where do we draw the lines, and how do we basically differentiate against what you're doing with the duty of care that you're imposing on the performance for the program, not only from the standpoint of the venue, but also from the requirements you place on the attendee. And I think that in so many situations, you may have your own code that says to the attendee, thou shalt or thou shalt not. What if they break that? Well, there's not much you can do. Yeah, you can probably throw them out. But I think the key element here is the liability factor is sort of the tail wagging the dog, that we need to look beyond that is, what are we doing to protect the health and safety of the people who are coming to our programs, and how we work with our vendors to do the next step to make it even more of an insurance. I've talked about that the meeting is not just the venue, it's the entire journey of getting to the meeting, and the whole aspect of, you're going to leave your house, you're going to get in the car, you're going to get in a taxi, you're going to get in an Uber, you're going to go to the airport, you're going to go through security, you're going to stop by and buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, maybe you walk down to the gate and get on the plane. You've got about 22 different steps that you're going to before you actually get to the venue. And the key element now is for us being able to say to the people who are coming, let's make sure that when you're coming, that part of the journey, you're doing everything to protect yourself, and you're dealing with vendors along that trip who are doing everything to protect you as well.
I think
To
it
your
goes.
knowledge, has there ever been any precedent set of some, not COVID-19 obviously, because that's a new phenomenon, but if somebody came to an event with a known illness, transmitted it, and then had some legal recourse?
Like Legionnaires.
Well, the Legionnaires thing, let's go back to that. That was Philadelphia how many years ago? And Legionnaires was a situation in which nobody knew exactly what it was. It was basically, as we now have found out, basically through the air conditioning HVAC as to what was going through, and the fact that you now had a deterioration. The most recent situation with Legionnaires was Atlanta with the Sheraton there, which the health department closed down for, I guess, a couple of months, and then they finally cleaned up their act and they were able to reopen. You got Ebola, you got Legionnaires, you got Zika. You know, what's your disease of the du jour for the day? And so I think we can keep looking at this, and there's always something. Remember that every year for the last umpteen years, we've had flu, and we have vaccinations for flu. How many people get vaccinated? Probably not those who should, but a few do and some don't. So what we're facing here, the whole thing with COVID-19, coming into the fall where we will have flu and COVID-19, or son or daughter of COVID-19, or some other aspect of it, what are we going to do and how are we going to go at it? I think we have seen so much fear-mongering that's been out there that has had the plays across the whole industry. Now, having said all that, I think we all have our own individual responsibility of what are we going to do to protect ourselves. And I think that becomes the key element. And I, for one, am going to be waiting for a vaccine to see what that goes, and get in line as fast as I can to get it. Now, does that mean I'll immediately rush out and get on an airplane to go somewhere? I don't know. I have to wait and see what is going to be the response and where we go. So what we're dealing with, which is always the human factor that cannot deal with, is the unknown.
But can I address something? Because we've had so many, I guess, non-clear ordinances, and it's left to each individual county and state level. would y'all agree? Because what I'm trying to understand too, because with all the live events coalitions and the national one, the Texas one, now the Austin one, is if we raise money for the lobbyists to help kind of be our voice at the Congress level, is that going to get us what we need? Or do we need to, do I need to be rallying more my city council member and go, hey, I need you to advocate for me because this is how many jobs are on the line. Like right now, you know, we're just trying to figure out, how do we become the loudest so we can get some help, because we are in this for the long haul. I am very worried because we are such a fragmented industry and we're made up of more smaller companies than bigger companies. And my worry is when October comes around, 50% of more of these businesses are going to be gone. And then when January rolls around, another 50% of who's left is going to be gone. So then when we finally come out of this in 2022, 2023, there's no one left really. And so, and because all of us have had to pivot to other industries because to survive, to make, you know, to make our ends meet. So I'm trying to figure out in my head, if I need to put my energy towards something besides, of course, again, pivoting our team to virtual and hybrid we've already done, what is it that I need to do to get our state and our universe organized so that we have someone advocating for us at the right level, since politics are definitely involved here, because that's why we have been lumped into the mass gatherings. Like Germany, they separated out. If you're a meeting, you are handled totally different than a festival.
Well, and I think that's what we have to see. Let me go back to the old Tip O'Donnell deal that all politics are local. And I would say that the focus at this point needs to be local. And the other thing that people are getting concerned about, how many people are willing to leap on an airplane to go to Seattle or to Portland? And it's not because of COVID, it's because of the civil disorder that's going on there. So we have a lot of things that are influencing people in making decisions as to what they're going to do. And I think that what we have to do in this industry is take those steps necessary to provide for the maximum amount that we can reasonably to protect the safety and health of the people who we're asking to come to our programs.
So,
The future of the hybrid meeting, let's face it, if you're not putting hybrid opportunities within your contracts with your vendors, you're not going to make it. We're going to see hybrid as a factor for the next several years. People need face-to-face, but people are also going to need hybrid. What we have found with those organizations which have done the virtual meeting, I don't think there's anybody who's done a virtual meeting that has not had record-breaking attendance. And I think that that's showing you that in order to get more people involved, you got to do a hybrid or have that virtual component so you can involve people who may not be able to travel. And let's face it too, we got a lot of businesses out there which are saying to their people, you shall not travel. And so that's another factor that needs to be overcome. And until those companies are ready to make the move to go forward, and now part of that thou shall not travel has two factors, the health and safety, but let's be pretty capitalistic about this. It's all the economic factor of travel and what people are doing. So I think we have seen, when we get down to the issues of trade shows, the trade show industry, I think, has been hit even more dramatically than the meetings industry, because the concept of a trade show is face-to-face. And to do a virtual trade show, I think we're finding is relatively difficult. People like to have the touchy-feely. And so until we are able to resolve some of those issues, we're going to continue to have this malaise, if you will, blanketing the industry and the industries and all of its components.
Yeah, there's definitely a stumble upon factor for a trade show. We were walking this trade show floor and you just happen to see somebody that you wouldn't normally see. And it's hard to do that virtually when you're scrolling, because it's so easy to scroll past somebody that just has a ho-hum logo.
Yeah, I'd be interested if anybody had a a good, I feel like the virtual events that I've participated in that have a trade show component now, and I'm not a big trade show person in the first place. Like I definitely,
Could you check what
I'll have to
industry you're in,
admit,
please, before you
I
say
know,
that?
I know, I know, I know. I do feel like I committed a little sin there, but there's definitely something to be desired in the like virtual trade show. I'm curious if anybody's participated in something that they're like, oh yeah, that that did work.
I didn't participate, but I know someone who did.
That's fine, that counts. You can pretend.
I mean, they did. They had a live trade show.
Oh, uh-huh.
They did a similar thing in single entry point, exit point. I mean, it's kind of what I call, they did the IKEA of trade shows. You had to follow the yellow signs around. You could not mix and mingle a whole lot. But I haven't heard anything post event as to whether there was any spread of COVID or any bad press. Everything
Probably difficult assembly instructions.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still trying to look at those.
So Cindy, I was going to bring to your point, and then I'll make a comment about Bill about the whole trade show. I mean, there's this whole emerging markets with virtual platforms, and they have actual go from trade show, from breakouts, streaming live, general sessions, and then recorded breakouts, and then you go into this platform and you pop in and you can have a chat room and all the rest of it. And it's all interesting and new, but it can be very static if you're just looking at it on the screen, and then you have to pursue where you're going. So I don't think that's ever going to replace a live event. I guess we all have to hope as well. But, my cancellations are not only in Texas, they are all across the United States, and I had a few international. So what I'm seeing is the United States of America, we govern at a state level. And so one of the things that I'm going to tell you is that Texas is the most wild, wild west that I've ever dealt with in my life. If you go to Seattle or if you go to Portland, they actually have a guideline that says no meetings more than 50. And although that sucks for the meeting industry, in my position, it was a breath of fresh air. It's just like, okay, nope, we can't. It's not like who does the fancy footwork and who can, it's like a chess game on trying to figure out how you deliver what your client wants or needs. And here it's wide open because the health officials, Cindy, are saying nobody should gather more than 10 or 25 people. The hotels are under the guise with the American Hotel and Lodging, the Texas Hotel and Lodging, that they can actually be open at 50%. And then they took the bars and restaurants information saying, well, we serve food, so we can be social distance with 6 feet at 50% and still serve food. So we're open and we are trying to run these businesses. So there's something really admirable about that, right? So yes, you're right. That advocates for the meeting same business planned events. But there's also on the other side, when the health officials are 100% saying no large gatherings are going to happen through the end of the year. It's the first to go, the last to come back. But then we've got struggling hotels that, feed all of us. I mean, we all need hotels to stay open. I don't know if you guys know this, but we're slated to lose 8,000 hotels in the United States if we don't get additional funding for them to bridge the gap between getting occupancy numbers up or, into the, the decent in order to have enough staff, right? So that's a real, and there's no, that was the American Hotel and Lodging statistics, but there wasn't, it could be limited service. It might not affect meetings. We don't know what percent is what, but still, that's a lot of hotels, a lot of businesses that are bigger than us gig workers or, small business owners. So I don't know where you go. I don't know if you press on the health officials to say that this is something that we need to condone. I mean, anytime there's alcohol, it's proven to be challenging, right? So that's probably not going to be let go. But I think any meetings really should. And I think if we all would have masked up and carried on, we wouldn't be in this. How do we reopen? How do we not be ashamed to have a 600-person event? We would have, and like John said, there's so many points at which, and the window of this symptoms, 21 days, anything could happen within 21 days that it might not have anything to do with your event, right? And even if we wait 21 days, people have moved on. If you try to trace yourself the last 21 days, you're not going to say, was it the conference? And so I don't think that liability, I think that liability doesn't stand. But what I will tell you is people are like, I can't have this meeting. The liability of having it. That's literally everybody's first comment out of their mouth. Anyway, my 2 cents.
Yeah, we have several other points that we were going to make, but I'm glad we've had this discussion. I just had a weird idea, and I don't know if you planners tell me if this would work. What if instead of traveling to have a large meeting in one location, you had like regional meet? I mean, now you're going to planning like 20 meetings instead of one meeting plus a hybrid meeting.
Yeah, we're calling that the hub and spoke model. They are definitely open to it. The challenge is the cost. So we were actually doing a hub and spoke in person here in Austin for November. And right now I think the client is just a little scared off by the price because we're trying to do it in 12 locations, no more than 10 people. So we're staying compliant to the Texas City of Austin ordinance. We're adding other precautions like, can you at least try to self-quarantine yourself prior to going to the event itself, just to make sure that you really are not asymptomatic, things like that, besides wearing the face mask. But it's the cost of doing it because we want to stream it between each other, the 12. That's actually what's driving the cost to be where they're like, well, if we can't find a sponsor, we may.
So it's a technology cost, not the 12 venues. That's
correct, because the venues are being donated. So the good news is because it's only 10 people, each of the venues have stepped up and said, you know what, we're gonna do it at this cost because we wanna just have an event. And some of them are in people's homes, but in backyards, if that makes sense. Like they're large homes. It's a fundraising event. And yeah, so the challenge right now is honestly is the technology in the sense of cost, because I was going to mention earlier when Jill was talking about, and I think, or Christina, I think it's important for us to educate our clients on the cost of what it takes to run a really good virtual event. I think some of them have, and I get why y'all are using Zoom. We use Zoom too, I get it. But this is not a virtual meeting, if that makes sense. This is us getting together, chatting, having a conversation. But if you were truly to do a virtual meeting or a virtual conference, you need a little bit more than that. You need some production value. You need to invest the time and the money to make it more broadcast worthy, because there's a lot of things out there that are vying for your attention.
It's almost like a television production.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like it has to have that engagement and that appeal and that kind of thing. So I'm always saying like 70%. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was saying people are expecting that now because everything is on Netflix and Hulu and YouTube. And if you're not entertaining enough, if you can't keep my attention, I'm going to log off. I have other things to do. I have other, and so that's why I think it's important to educate our clients, because we have seen a huge uptick in virtual asks. But what was interesting is those that budgeted at least reasonably, I won't say correctly, reasonably, versus those that had unrealistic expectations. They wanted it as if we were filming for Netflix on a budget that is a Zoom budget. And I was like, you just can't do that.
Do you have any
let me ask this question. What has been the most memorable event in the Democrat convention, all virtual to date? And my answer is real easy. It was the roll call of the various states.
But everyone's saying too. Yeah, no, I've been watching it every night just to see
attention. Everything else has been, put it bluntly, boring. And that was cool. And Rhode Island hit the home run.
And ask yourself, so it's funny that you should say this, because I'm looking at it, not necessarily the content, but I was looking at it, how they produced it. And because I know the company that's producing it, and I was like, interesting that they made that choice. I wonder why. Like there's a lot of and everyone, my husband's like, oh, did you hear that message? I go, honestly, no, I heard the delay. And I'm trying to think like, why? Like, can we fix that delay, or is that delay not possible? Because the comment was after Kamala spoke last night, is that when she applauded towards the screen, it was weird. It was awkward because there was no clapping. And I was like, piped in fake clapping right then to bridge that 2-second delay. And my husband was like, are you even paying attention? And I'm like, yes, I am paying attention, just from a different angle. Like, I am trying to see what they're doing production wise.
Yeah.
But,
So how would you approach that? I mean, would you just accept it and try to make?
no, I honestly would ask my team, let's think about how we can fix this. And that's why we have added some fake clapping. It is not what we want, but guess what? We were practicing on ourselves, and we noticed that the awkward silence is very painful. People don't like it. Even if you're
Have you watched any baseball games?
like it.
Like,
Yes, they don't like it. It is not good. Why do you think even, like when you are normally watching a sports event, why do you think the sportscasters are just talking and blabbing? Because people don't like silence. Unless you're at a
take a look at, is Jimmy Fallon as funny without an audience as with an audience?
But if you show up to Jimmy Fallon's show and you're in the audience, if you've ever been to a live production, like you're watching the show here, and then they have these monitors on the side, they're like, clap now. So everybody starts to clap. So even at live productions, when you're in the same room, they're cueing you what to do, you know? I mean, it's a big deal. It's like a big
Yeah,
television.
I've watched them all, the Fallons and the
My
Cobra.
personal favorite has been Hassan Minaj. Is that how you pronounce it? He unfortunately lost his Netflix contract. And I think he does a great job considering he's talking to a screen.
Yeah, but they've all, like, right at the beginning, were like, this is hard. This is hard without a studio audience and some feedback.
Back to why we want live events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, the pent-up demand is there. I am not worried at all that hybrid will ever take over live, because there will always be a component for that. My concern is this bridging this, what I'm calling the gap between right now and when we realistically can have even a reasonable forecast. Like, I'll be very transparent. Our forecast for 2021 has never looked as bleak as it ever has been since I started this business. And I am very scared because the clients are telling me I can't make a decision, Cindy, until 90 days out, because that's how we're planning our budgets. And I said, 90 days out, not only does it hurt me from figuring out which team members we get to keep and versus which we don't, but it also is very hard. Let's pretend like all of a sudden, all of y'all decide to come and do a virtual about the same time. I can't, because I am limited based on my team size. So then all of a sudden now I'm having to shift you to, I have to send you to my competitors, which is okay because I want them to survive too. But then we lose that chance to work together. Whereas I go, if you can at least even tell me where your headspace is at now, I can tell you realistically what our 2021 looks like, so I can slot you in and then hold the dates, because it does take time to do a good.
Well, it takes time, and it also takes money, and you need to be starting 90 days on the production, lining up speakers, you know, like all, you know, fine tuning what's going to be said. What is the message of it? That needs to be starting 90 days, and that's my argument with hotels when we're trying to figure out what we're going to do, because there's just no way to do it, like to wait into your window of what you think it would be, quote unquote, force majeure, right? Like that's the latest thing. Well, let's wait. We need to wait and see. And I'm thinking, we're working with 1.5, 2, 3, maybe 5 staff. Like, how are they going to put on a production or, you know, pivot to do one or the other with, you know, net 45 days? It's just, it's a mess.
And the learning curve. I mean, there's a learning curve here that we have to allow ourselves time to figure out how to do this without going out of business first.
Yep.
Yeah, so I had 2 executive directors talk about from cancel to virtual in 60 days. And they used your usual tools in order to do it. You know, they logged into their website, and not surprising, they were super profitable because people actually showed up, they got their registration, and they didn't have the big fees of hotels, right? So, but one of the things, to Jill's point, is that they spent half of their time educating their attendees on how to use the tool/platform that they chose, and then to the midnight hours putting together their content. So, I mean, that's huge in its own right. Like, people don't think about that stuff. In 90 days, Cindy, isn't enough.
Oh, I agree.
You know?
Oh, trust me, you don't need to tell me that. I've been trying to tell them that, and they were like, you're not going to change our controller or our CFO's mind right now. It's
I'm actually sort of a little envious, Cindy. I've got a client that just won't respond. And I
Oh.
know it's because she doesn't want to give me bad news or hurt
Yeah.
my feelings.
I've actually been telling them, I need you to lay it straight to me, because here's why. You are, not to put pressure on you and make you feel guilty, but you are helping me decide how I structure our team, because right now I need to figure out how I need to structure for 2021 to survive, assuming I get no more business. And that's the sad part, is that I only have business that is rescheduled from 2020. It is not new business, because no one's willing to talk about it. They said,
Right.
I think the key watchword here is, and I keep saying this in some of the programs I do, I can't blame you for bad news, but I sure as hell can blame you for not telling me.
okay, I like that. I will try that, because exactly, it's like, I just need to know, because again, I'm a planner, and I can't keep all these people on hope that you're going to call me in November for a January virtual, because that's essentially what they're telling me. Because I've asked them, and I apologize, I have to jump off for another call soon. I've asked them many times. I said, I know you normally do a company kickoff in January. So at this point, I got to think you're thinking virtual. So let us help you. And they're like, it's too soon, Cindy. And I go, no, it's not. Like, you need to figure out, are you going to set aside the money or not? Because when you call me in November, I may be short half my team, because I can't keep, because we've kept 23 on out of the 27 we started with. And it's a lot of pressure, because, and they feel it too, because
Well,
they have,
congratulations on that.
I mean, but they are working like nonstop. That's the problem, is that it's exhausting. And right now I'm like, I worry for their health and well-being. I've reminded them over and over again, please, if you need a time off, you need to put it in, because I'll be honest, right now I am just trying to keep us alive. And it's just constantly me calling out to clients, and me trying to reach out to them, me trying to close new stuff. But I get it that we're all learning this, because it's uncomfortable doing the virtual, because when something fails, usually we can't see it. We only can hear it, because someone is either in the chat room or texting us, like, and we're trying to rescue it, and it's hard.
Yeah. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, John. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, every nerd that showed up to contribute. You guys were awesome. We are out of time. Cindy's got to jump off for another call, and I think we all do. So let's give everyone a round of applause. Let's talk about in 2 weeks, we have Brant Kruger coming on. He is a tech expert. Jim Spellos. Still is tech expert.
Off.
So
yeah, you're switched.
keep the description, change the name to Jim Spellos. In between that, I think we're going to kind of do the same thing. We have another open discussion, which will be awesome. And then after that, we do have Brant Kruger. I'm not making his name up out of nowhere. He's coming on October 1st. So mark your calendars. Every 2 weeks, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to try to do some open discussions and bring in some great guest speakers. Thank you guys for joining us. Go get on your next call.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good to see everybody's face.
Bye, all. Thanks for joining.